Hi everyone, it's Arlene with Design with Arlene, and today's card is made using these fun little embossed leaves that have been embossed on vellum, as well as some stamping on this background with some sponging as well, and then these fun sayings here that are popped up as well. So let me go ahead and get started, and I'll show you which stamp set that I'm using. I'm starting out with the Rooted in Nature stamp set. This is actually a set of 2 cases, so a set of 16 altogether, and I'm going to be using the couple of the stamps here. This leaf, which has a very intricate design in here. I love this. It looks like there's just so many veins and everything going on in here, so it's really pretty, very detailed. And then as well as the little sprig of leaves here. And then I'm also going to be using another stamp set, and this is the Thoughtful Blooms. Actually just one stamp from here, which is this little, the little cluster of circles right here. For the cardstock that I'm using, I've got a few pieces actually of the soft suede. This is the base of the card, which is 7 inches by 4 inches, and then I scored it down the middle and folded it in half. And then I have a piece to layer on top. And this is So Saffron. This is 3 1/4 by 3 3/4, and be stamping and sponging on that, and then layering it on top of the card base. And then I have another piece of soft suede, and this is 2 1/2 by 3 inches, and that's going to get layered on top of the So Saffron. And then just a piece of just a scrap paper that I will be stamping the sentiment on. And I also have a piece of paper. This is 8 1/2 by 11 piece of vellum paper that I will be stamping the leaves on, which is actually what we will go ahead and get started with right now. So I'm using the Versamark stamp pad, and this is what I use for embossing. I'm going to take the leaf from the stamp set right here. It's the larger leaf on that stamp set, and just inking up with the Versamark pad, and it really is not much color at all to it. Just going to stamp that. You can see there's not much, you can just barely see it there, but I want to go ahead and I've got some copper embossing powder, and then just a piece of scratch paper I like to put under, and then just sprinkle that embossing powder over, and then tap off the excess. I might do it a couple times here just to make sure I get enough on. Okay, and then when you're done, what you want to do, the next step is just to go ahead and put that embossing powder just right back into the bottle, so it doesn't tend to spill or anything, or you'll have it all over if you cough or sneeze. And right now you don't want to cough or sneeze, especially in public, right? All right, stamp that a couple more times, each changing out the different embossing powder. So this next one, I'm going to be using the gold, some gold. This embossing powder lasts a really long time. I've had all 3 of these embossing powders for a long time, years. So now, do you see how it left a little bit of some excess embossing powder that you don't want? I'm actually going to be trimming around there, so it's not that big of a deal, but let me show you what will help with that. Go ahead and I will put this gold back into its container, and then we're going to go with a different color combination. I actually found this in my stash. So this is an old jar, and it says silver on here, but as I looked, I could tell that I actually added something to the silver. Years ago, that's what I used to like to do, is kind of just, add silver to gold or get a mixture. So this has some pretty large grains, and it's so long, I don't even know what's in there, but you know what? We're using it today, right? If you are homebound right now, if you're watching this fairly soon after I have posted this on live, everybody with the coronavirus around, we're doing a staying home. So I'm using what I have in my stash. Now this is an embossing buddy, and it's just kind of a powder it's got powder in there real fine. And when you rub it onto your paper before you emboss, it helps to keep the embossing powder from sticking so much. So let's go ahead and try this again. This time using this silver concoction, let's call it. So I'm trying to get more of the silver on there because this clear is pretty large, and when it melts, it's actually really pretty because it looks a little bit like drops of water. Okay, so let's pour this back into the container. Make sure we shut that jar. Let's screw the cap back on. And then I'll show you what it did. You see how much better the embossing powder did not stick onto the vellum, the part that I did not want it to stick on. And the next thing that you will need to do when you are embossing is add heat to it. I have a gun, so it's just gonna shoot a blast of hot air. So you can go directly on top of where you've embossed at, or you can go underneath. And now that we have those embossed, so once you heat emboss them and they cool down, they're ready to go. They stay, they're permanently on there. And you can see this silver right here. You notice because I had bigger drops. Now here's a drop of, this is some of that thicker embossing powder. So really, honestly, I do not know what kind of embossing powder it is. But you know what? It's still fun. It's fun. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these cut out of the sheet of vellum. Just really closely, just leaving a very small little edge of vellum. And while I have the Versamark out and my embossing gun, I'm going to go ahead and take that scrap piece of soft suede and with the Versamark, stamp this image. This is the sentiment. And then I'm going to just pour some clear embossing powder over what I've stamped. And heat this up. So I've got clear on here, and you'll see it's just going to be kind of a tone on tone. It'll be a little bit darker because there's no ink that's been added onto it, but the Versamark, by heating it up, will appear a little bit darker as the cardstock. Okay, you can see that, and then all I will be doing is just cutting those strips out. All right, so we have the 3 of these cut out, ready to go. A little disclaimer here, it is still spring break around here, and of course the kids will not be going to school as soon as we thought they would, with spring break being extended. So if you hear them, they are home and they are inside because it's been snowing off and on today. Next, I'm going to take that piece of So Saffron and using 2 colors here. We've got the Garden Green and the Calypso Coral. And this is our leaf right here. And with the Garden Green, I'm going to just ink up the Garden Green and then stamp once onto my scrap paper. Stamp once onto my scrap paper and then a couple of times onto the So Saffron. Just randomly all around. Now remember, you're covering up the middle, so you really don't need to stamp that part. And once in a while, you might just go directly onto it without tapping off first. All right, and then taking the Calypso Coral, we're going to take some of those little, that looks like berries stamp. And again with Calypso Coral, and stamp once, couple times off without re-inking, randomly across the edge that is going to be showing onto the sides of your paper. And then just double check to make sure that you've got enough stamped on. Yep, looks good. Okay, I've got some stamp daubers here. These are little sponges, and I'm going to be taking them in both, one for the Calypso Coral, and just getting ink from the ink pad onto the stamp dauber, and then starting on this scrap piece of paper that I have at the bottom of my work, just kind of start in a circular motion and sponge with a circular motion continuing around the edge of the cardstock. All right, and then continuing on with sponging in the Garden Green, and I've changed out my sponge dauber, and we'll do that across the paper as well. Okay, so there is your layered cardstock in So Saffron, excuse me, that has been stamped and sponged. And the next thing we're going to do is just go ahead and take these and put them together. So let's layer the So Saffron onto our card. Okay, so if you are a subscriber to Paper Pumpkin, you probably have quite the collection of these little dots here, these little adhesive dots. So I'm actually going to be using those to glue on the leaves onto the cardstock. I'm doing that because, well, one, I have so many extra are laying around, but two is they're clear, so they won't really show as much when you are gluing them down, because the vellum will show through. So if you have, say, like some white, well, this is clear too as well, but needing to get rid of some of my stash, especially since we have time with the, you know, staying home. I'm going to lay that down like this, and then with the other two, I will be doing the same thing, just gluing them down. Okay, we've got the 3 leaves that are glued down, and the next thing that I want to do is add our sentiment, and I want to pop that up a little bit. So I've got these little foam, these are adhesive on both sides. This is some little 3D foam here. So just going to trim that into 3 little pieces here, and then just apply it onto the back side of each little saying. This is probably where tweezers would come in handy. I think I'm going to grab mine. Okay, we've got the sentiment on there. We're going to add a little bit of some embellishments. These are some leaf trinkets here. So you can choose to add these, or you can leave them. So it looks fine like that. You could put a little bow, but I'm going to add just a couple of embellishments. I think, let's see, let's do the larger tail. I think actually I like that copper with a smaller silver. And again, I've got some of these little adhesive dots. I'll probably add a couple of them here. All right, and then to tie that together, I've just got some linen thread. This again is some leftover that I had from a Paper Pumpkin pack. And tying a bow. How I like to tie bows, because I know I should be called Arlene Can't Tie Bows. I say that a lot, but I've learned a couple of tricks. The easiest way for me to tie a bow is to not trim the piece and just leave it on the spool or wherever your ribbon or thread is coming from, and then you can work with it. And then when you're finished, when you've got your bow ready, you can just trim it off. And that seems to work better for me. The best anyway. I'm still need a lot of practice with those bow techniques. Okay, again, just take some of this adhesive. I think I'll put it right here. It should be good. See if this works to glue it down. Yeah, it's good. Okay. Then you've got a beautiful card. And then you can always, you know, open it up. You can add another layer of some lighter cardstock so that it's easier to write in with a darker pen, or you can leave it like that and write it with like a white marker or something if you choose to. So, okay, so thanks you guys for stopping by. Hope this gives you some ideas on how to be creative yourself at home, and have a great day. And remember, wash your hands. Bye, everyone.